British Prime Minister Winston Churchill said that the Battle of the Bulge was undoubtedly the greatest American battle of the war. In this, of course, he was quite correct. But what many people don't realize is that it was not only Americans who halted and defeated Hitler's Ardennes offensive. There was a small but important contribution by British Commonwealth forces that was written out of the story almost as soon as the fighting was over. Largely, as General Sir Alan Brooke, Chief of the Imperial General Staff, noted, quote, for political reasons, unquote. Hitler's Great Ardennes Offensive struck a thinly defended sector of the American front line on the 16th of December 1944 and raged for a month of hellish fighting. Field Marshal Sir Bernard Montgomery commanded the 21st Army Group, the British Commonwealth's contribution to the invasion of northwest Europe, and advanced steadily from northern France into the Netherlands and northern Germany. When the Germans struck in the Ardennes, they pushed a salient deep into American lines, creating the famous Bulge. Montgomery's forces, like American forces south of the Bulge, would be sucked into the fighting. The German plan was to get clear of the Ardennes forest, cross the River Meuse, and then strike out over good tank country to Antwerp, the major Allied supply base captured by Montgomery's forces.
By the first week in December, the whole line of the Maas River was firmly held, while the Americans were probing into Germany itself. The bag of Nazi prisoners on this front had grown to pretty sizable proportions.
As German forces slowly advanced, held up at several points by very determined American resistance, particularly around the important crossroads town of Bastogne, a battle group from the 5th Panzer Army managed to move towards the Meuse River. 600,000 American troops fought in the Bulge, and Churchill's description is accurate. But what is often ignored is the fact that 55,000 British and Canadian troops also fought, and were responsible for denying the 4 German units an important bridge to cross the Meuse River, the town of Dinant, and for stopping any further westward advances by 2 armoured battle groups from the 5th Panzer Army that came closest to reaching the river, Hitler's intermediate objective before the push on to the city of Antwerp. On the 19th of December 1944, Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower, in agreement with Prime Minister Churchill, made some temporary command changes in light of the dire Ardennes situation. All American units deployed north of a line from the towns of Givet to Prüm were placed under Field Marshal Montgomery's British 21st Army Group, while those south of the line would fall under General Omar Bradley's 12th Army Group. This placed many US divisions under British command. The next day, Monty ordered the British 30 Corps under Lieutenant General Brian Horrocks to leave its positions in the Netherlands and rush to defensive positions between Givet and Maastricht. They would provide a last line of defence to prevent the Germans from crossing the Meuse River and advancing on Antwerp. The 51st Highland Division and 53rd Welsh Division took up positions, along with the 29th and 33rd Armoured Brigades. These units dug in between the Meuse River and Antwerp to provide a last line of resistance in case the Americans failed to contain the German offensive and German forces actually got across the Meuse. Eisenhower knew that the loss of Antwerp would have been catastrophic to the Allied advance on Germany, and ordered Monty to protect the port at all costs. But Monty was also able to be proactive and assist hard-pressed US forces on the northern shoulder of the Bulge by dispatching some of Britain's best troops to help stop the German advance, the famed Red Devils, the Parachute Regiment. The British 6th Airborne Division had last seen action on D-Day, dropping alongside American paratroopers, and was trucked to the Ardennes, the paras digging in between Dinant and Marche-en-Famenne, right in the path of the advancing German 2nd Panzer Division. Battle was joined early on the morning of Christmas Eve when the 3rd Royal Tank Regiment, supported by US Shermans, actually crossed the River Meuse and entered the first Ardennes battle between British and German forces. 2 German battle groups from the 2nd Panzer Division were fast approaching the Meuse. Kampfgruppe Korkenhausen, named for its commander, Major Ernst von Korkenhausen, reached the town of Celle, a few kilometers south of Foy-Notre-Dame, and about 12 kilometers from the river. Korkenhausen was heading for Dinant on the Meuse, but his leading Panther ran over a US mine and was knocked out. Locals told Korkenhausen untruthfully that the road to Dinant was heavily mined. Fearing being spotted by Allied aircraft, Korkenhausen pulled his Kampfgruppe back into nearby woods, setting up his command post. The 2nd Panzer Division's other battle group approaching the Meuse was Kampfgruppe Böhm, a subject I made a program about some time ago. Please check out the link in the description box below. Major von Böhm was moving steadily towards Dinant when first contact was made with British troops. Just outside the village of Foy-Notre-Dame, a Sherman Firefly, the 3rd Royal Tank Regiment, lay in wait. The crew could hear the rumble of German tank engines approaching. As a German vehicle came in sight, the Firefly fired its powerful 17-pounder or 76.2mm gun, but missed. The shell instead struck a German truck loaded with ammunition, causing a massive explosion. The Firefly fired again, knocking out a Panzer IV. Panthers moved forward to try and locate the Firefly, but the sergeant commanding reversed rapidly away and reported the contact to headquarters. Major von Böhm's column was almost out of fuel and halted at Foy-Notre-Dame. In the meantime, members of the Belgian resistance had located Major von Korkenhausen's hidden battle group and informed British headquarters. The forward elements of the 2nd Panzer Division were now only 7 kilometers from the Meuse at Dinant, but, frustratingly for the Germans, the forward elements were running so low on fuel and supplies they came virtually to a halt. American divisions were fighting hard on the German flanks and in the rear areas. Kampfgruppe Korkenhausen, in 2 pockets between Celle and Corneau, had dug in and awaited reinforcements from the 9th Panzer Division, but the 9th was also delayed and awaiting fuel itself. The Germans were very close to their initial objective and the delays were insufferable. Field Marshal Walter Model ordered reconnaissance units to leave their vehicles and capture the bridge at Dinant on foot. By now, both Kampfgruppes were under British artillery fire.
The Germans' own guns, captured, were now turned against them.
Worse was to come. On Christmas Day, the British counterattacked. Kampfgruppe Böhm's reconnaissance battalion was heavily bombarded in Foy-Notre-Dame. US divisions were attacking German forces close by. On the afternoon of Christmas Day, Shermans of the 3rd Royal Tank Regiment, supported by the US 82nd Reconnaissance Battalion, advanced from the village of Sorin on Foy-Notre-Dame. In heavy fighting, the village was retaken, and Major von Böhm and 148 of his men were captured. Some managed to escape through the deep snow, back to German lines, but all the vehicles had been lost. Celle was assaulted by Combat Command B of the US 2nd Armored Division. Over 2 days of vicious fighting, 2,500 Germans were killed or wounded, and 1,200 captured. 82 German armored fighting vehicles were captured or destroyed by the Americans. Major von Korkenhausen, with 600 men, managed to escape on foot in small groups back to German lines. Throughout the 26th of December, the 3rd Royal Tank Regiment continued with mopping up operations in the area, supported by rocket-firing Typhoon aircraft of the Royal Air Force. In the last days of December, the British 30 Corps extended its positions between the Meuse and the town of Ardennes. The weather grew worse, making aerial reconnaissance impossible. The 53rd Welsh Division replaced the Americans at Marche-en-Famenne. Headquarters wanted to know the dispositions of what remained of the Panzer-Lehr Division and the 2nd Panzer Division. A 350-strong team of reconnaissance troops mounted in machine-gun-armed jeeps was sent to the large forest south of Rochefort and Marche. It consisted of the British 61st Reconnaissance Regiment from the 6th Airborne Division and some Belgian and French SAS troops. A jeep-mounted reconnaissance party from the 5th SAS Regiment located part of the Panzer-Lehr Division 10 kilometers south of Rochefort at the town of Beevor on the 31st of December. 3 SAS were killed when their jeep was hit by a German 88mm shell. The British were ordered to capture Beevor on the 2nd of January 1945. The British paratroopers were supported by Shermans of the Fife and Forfar Yeomanry from the 11th Armoured Division. The intention of the attack was to fully halt any further German advances on the Meuse River, which could have resumed if the Germans had managed to sort out their supply and fuel problems. Elsewhere, stubborn US counterattacks had halted or isolated other German units. On the 3rd of January, the 13th Lancashire Parachute Battalion began its assault on Beevor on foot through deep snow. Facing them were elements of the Panzer-Lehr Division. Both attacking companies were plastered with German mortar and machine gun fire, and German tanks also joined in. Pulling back, the British regrouped and attacked again. A Company managed to gain a foothold in the village, and B Company took the high ground and also entered Beevor. C Company was sent in as reinforcements. The Germans launched immediate counterattacks, fighting from strong points in buildings. At one point, A Company of the Paras actually called down artillery fire on their own position. Such was the close-quarter nature of the fighting. On the 4th of January, the Germans bombarded the Paras with intense artillery fire before Panzergrenadiers attacked. The Paras fought off 5 German counterattacks that day, all supported by panzers. The Paras knocked out several German tanks with Piat launchers. Beevor was reduced to ruins. On the evening of the 4th of January, British reinforcements arrived. C Company, 2nd Battalion, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry came up. Next day, 5th of January, the British launched an all-out assault that eliminated remaining German resistance, the last German outpost falling at 9 p.m. that night. 16 Sherman tanks of the Fife and Forfar Yeomanry and the 23rd Hussars were knocked out. The Panzer-Lehr Division lost 500 men and 11 tanks knocked out or damaged in the fight with the British. The British took up the advance, and throughout early January assisted the general US assault on the German Bulge, fighting and capturing 13 towns and villages. On the 16th of January 1945, having achieved all of its aims, Montgomery withdrew 30 Corps to Holland in preparation for the battle for the Rhineland and ultimately the crossing of the Rhine River. In total, 325 British troops were killed in the Ardennes and over 1,100 wounded or missing. It was a small sacrifice in comparison to the tens of thousands of Americans killed and wounded in the Battle of the Bulge, but the small British commitment at Dinant was at the time very important, finally preventing any German forces from reaching and crossing the Meuse, which would have had dire results for the US positions on either side of the Bulge. German logistical problems severely hampered their advance, but the British successfully slammed the door in the face of the 2 2nd Panzer Division battle groups that almost made it to the offensive's first major objective, and bought time for US forces fighting hard right across the region to begin to counterattack and crush the German bridgehead. The British contribution to defeating Operation Wacht am Rhein should not be forgotten. Don't forget to visit my new audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. Link below. And I'd like to thank all those who have subscribed, and especially those who have kindly helped support my channels at PayPal and Patreon. I wish each and every one of you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Bye.